Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Federal Tory leader Pierre Poilievre was asked his thoughts regarding the many lawsuits being launched against Ottawa by those who had their bank accounts frozen. We hear from a Manitoba man who's launching legal proceedings, suing both Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Deputy PM Chrystia Freeland. And millions more is being invested into the Lethbridge shelter to expand and help more of our city's most vulnerable.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was asked his thoughts about the groups of Canadians who are now suing the federal government as a result of their bank accounts being frozen, and how many say their constitutional rights were taken away during the Freedom Convoy. Poilievre says it was wrong that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau created so much division among Canadians.
Justin Trudeau divided the country. He provoked the crisis. He's now been found to have violated the Constitution. He did it without any scientific evidence. It was another example of how Justin Trudeau has only two principles. One is that the government should control everybody, and two, that he should control the government. The only way he keeps this control in light of the misery that he has unleashed, doubling housing costs, quadrupling carbon taxes, is by cracking down on the population and dividing people against each other. I will do the exact opposite. I will empower the people from the bottom up. I will unite for freedom rather than dividing to conquer.
Now, there's a group in Manitoba which is suing the federal government. They're angry that their bank accounts were frozen during the Freedom Convoy, and many say their freedoms were taken away. Now, to make matters worse for the Trudeau government, the federal court said that invoking the Emergencies Act during the pandemic was unreasonable. Sean Zimmer is with the Manitoba Freedom Foundation, and he joins us now from Winnipeg to talk about a civil lawsuit which is being launched. Sean, how many are involved and what kind of compensation are you seeking?
There's a few different lawsuits going forward with a couple different firms. The one I'm involved in has 19 other plaintiffs. There is another one, I'm not sure how many people are involved in that, and there is a class action that's going to be moving forward as well, which will include everybody who had their bank account frozen or who incurred injuries during the Emergency Act being invoked. So as of now, I know the law firm I'm connected to has 19 plaintiffs, and we are, in terms of, retributions, my biggest focus is, obviously we want to have people held accountable for the injustice we've seen. Most definitely my gear has always been to unite people, to connect us with God, have us all rise together, stop going against our neighbor. And I feel without a doubt, whatever the outcome is in this court case, this will help more people stir and wake to the alarm of what's going on and start uniting and coming together and helping us connect closer to our Creator. I do know the other court case that's been filed from a separate firm. They are looking for $2 million per plaintiff. So that's the only number that I'm aware of as of right now. But for me, there's no attachment to any specific number. We'll see what God has planned out.
So, Sean, how much do you think having the federal court rule that invoking the Emergencies Act was unreasonable will really help your case?
Absolutely help, but that's why it's being pushed forward now. And you have a lot of people coming together. There's a lot of lawyers who feel that they have solid grounds to push forward. So definitely will be helping very much. We'll see what kind of justice is had in court, if we can still rely on the justice system or not. This will be a clear case on that. I believe the standings are very clear that it should be successful. And if it's not, that'll again help more people realize just how faulty the system, how far it's come from true justice, and have more people unite together and start taking a stand.
So how much support have you received so far from other Canadians in regards to the civil lawsuit?
Plenty of support. I've taken a stand very early on from the beginning of the pandemic, building community here in Winnipeg. And I've had just nonstop pouring support from day one. And that continues today as we've shared the announcement with the lawsuit the last few days. So it's been overwhelming and very appreciated for all of you doing your part to share it out there, come together. This is a civil lawsuit on my part with my firm that we're going through, which the firm I'm involved with is Lowberg. That was the firm responsible for winning the recent ruling. So we're going against powers who have unlimited financial resources in civil lawsuits. So there is fundraising that's going to be put together that is offshore where they can't touch it, which we will need people to come together to be able to actually push back in the long run. We'll see how long this goes, if it goes to trial. It's not solely up to me on what's decided on that. Obviously, I'm part of a group with this one.
Now, Sean, unfortunately, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did not meet with truckers during the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa. Let's say our Prime Minister is watching this newscast right now. What message would you want to convey to him?
You know, I don't hold any resentment or any hate in my heart. I feel that you have some dark forces guiding you, holding something over you, and I hope that you can come to peace with God and step up and own up to your mistakes, own up to what you've done, and start standing for the people. And step down would be one of the first things to do after your public announcement of holding yourself accountable for what's been done.
Sean Zimmer with the Manitoba Freedom Foundation, thanks so much for joining us today from Winnipeg. The controversy surrounding the ArriveCan app was front and center once again on Parliament Hill. Now, during question period today, St. Albert Edmonton Tory MP Michael Cooper says the RCMP should not be hindered in its investigation to find out why an app, which was supposed to cost $80,000, ended up costing taxpayers around $60 million.
The Arrive scam app is just like the Prime Minister, not worth the cost and not worth the corruption. The Auditor General revealed that an app that didn't work cost taxpayers a staggering $60 million, including $20 million that went to a two-person company that did no work. Now the RCMP have launched a criminal investigation, but are being obstructed by these Liberals who are hiding documents. Will the Prime Minister stop the obstruction and turn over the documents today?
There have already been a number of answers given to that question this week and even today. The answer is still the same. The Auditor General deserves our acknowledgement. She's done a lot of work, and it's very important, and the report on Monday was troubling. The good news is that a lot of the recommendations she made have already been implemented and have been for some time now, but the work is ongoing because it's very important to ensure that the public service is doing its work properly, even in times of crisis.
The Alberta government has signed a memorandum of understanding with the Blood Tribe Department of Health to continue operating the Lethbridge shelter and will also be investing $4 million toward expansion. Through a new MOU, government officials and the Blood Tribe commit to continuing their partnership to advance reconciliation through Indigenous-led shelter operation. A $4 million capital grant will go toward expanding the emergency shelter through the Lethbridge Housing Authority. The shelter currently provides around 120 spaces and offers services to support our homeless. Social Services Minister Jason Nixon says his government likes to run shelters differently.
The circumstances that we see taking place on the streets or in our homeless populations across the province have changed considerably from that time, frankly, where I grew up in a homeless shelter. And that has required us to adapt and to make different type of policy decisions to make sure that we can have success to be able to help the individuals that we're working with. And we have made several changes throughout our emergency shelter system in the province in response to that. Stuff like opening up all of our shelter system 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Or adding different types of addiction support connections into our shelters, or different types of transition beds that worked with our shelter system, or adding women-only spaces, something that we're seeing particularly in Edmonton and Calgary right now, a need for not domestic violence spaces, though that's important and our province is doing it, but women-only spaces for population that are sleeping rough on the streets to have a place where they can feel a little bit more safe and secure.
The shelter currently receives around $3.5 million annually from the province, and the City of Lethbridge will also be providing $1.4 million to go towards the project. Breaking and addiction can be one of the most difficult obstacles a person has to deal with in their lifetime. They don't have to do it alone, however. Patty Bidevat is a ministry leader in Lethbridge at Celebrate Recovery. She says they offer support to help overcome the addictions that so many people are battling.
It is for a wide variety of hurts, hang-ups, or habits. Some people have issues with codependency, or maybe there might be other addictions like shopping addiction or food addiction, or just simply been hurt and are struggling with maybe some anxiety or depression and just need some support from a loving group of people that love God and love each other and just want to help one another.
Hear more about Celebrate Recovery with Patty Bidevat and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up in the second half of our program. Alberta NDP leadership hopeful Kathleen Ganley came down from Calgary today and was joined by her campaign chair and Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips to discuss how life could be made more affordable for Albertans.
we need to talk a lot about the economy, and that is exactly what I plan to do. We've released 2 policy proposals so far, one just today. So the first one is on the economy. It is a proposal that would increase the personal income tax exemption to $26,000. That means no one living in poverty would pay income taxes. It also means that 2.5 million Albertans, those earning less than $148,000 a year, would get a break. I've also put forward a proposal just this morning to members of the Alberta's NDP about a charter in terms of how we would engage members of the party going forward. What I really want to do is build a movement that can win this province. When I decided that I did not want to pursue the leadership, it was made so much easier when I learned that Kathleen wanted to pursue the top job. And that is because she has a plan to win. She's focused on the economy, and she's focused on growing the party in the ways that we need to be able to win outside of Edmonton in particular, but also Edmonton and Calgary.
The Alberta NDP will be choosing their new leader in June. 2 of the 4 Chinook High School football players who were charged with sexual assault of another player have pleaded not guilty here in Lethbridge. The boys, all aged 16 and 17, are charged with sexual assault with a weapon, assault with a weapon, and forcible confinement. They cannot be named because of their ages. This week, the Crown asked that a charge against one of the teenagers be downgraded from assault with a weapon to assault. The change would make it a summary offense, which is considered less serious. Lawyers for all 4 accused will be back in court on February the 28th. The case dates back to October 3rd, when, according to police, a 16-year-old boy was assaulted in a locker room after regular school hours. After charges were laid, the football program at the high school was canceled for the rest of the season by the Lethbridge School Division. 2 suspects have been arrested by RCMP following a robbery of the Southern Community Food Security and Thrift Store in Raymond. Police say on February the 9th, one person entered the building, demanded cash, and then fled in an awaiting vehicle. Through their investigation and thanks to tips from the public, the 2 were arrested. 34-year-old Jamie Sheridan of McGrath and 36-year-old Megan Sheridan, also McGrath, are both charged with robbery. They're both scheduled to appear in court on March the 7th. Russia's main state TV channel interrupted its newscast to announce the death of opposition leader Alexei Navalny in an Arctic penal colony. Russia's prison agency says it is investigating after the 47-year-old felt unwell following a walk, lost consciousness. It could not be revived. Just hours after his death was reported, Navalny's wife appeared on stage at the Munich Security Conference that both Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly and Defense Minister Bill Blair were attending. She said she wasn't sure if she could believe the news coming from official Russian sources. Many have been reacting to the news that Vladimir Putin's fiercest foe is now gone.
Я обещаю, что я не сдамся и отомщу за Алексея любыми способами, которыми мы можем. И призываю всех не сдаваться. Эти твари недостойны нашего отчаяния. Не сдавайтесь, друзья.
U.S. President Joe Biden reacted to the news of Navalny's death. He said he is outraged but not surprised and blamed Russian President Vladimir Putin.
He bravely stood up to the corruption, the violence, and all the bad things that the Putin government was doing. In response, Putin had him poisoned, he had him arrested, he had him prosecuted for fabricated crimes, he sentenced him to prison, he was held in isolation. Even all that didn't stop him from calling out Putin's lies. Even in prison, he was a powerful voice for the truth, which is kind of amazing when you think about it. And he could have lived safely in exile after the assassination attempt on him in 2020, which nearly killed him, I might add. But he was traveling outside the country at the time. Instead, he returned to Russia. He returned to Russia, knowing he'd likely be in prison.
Argentina's president made a stop in Israel to help strengthen the relationship between the 2 countries. He also told reporters that he wants to move Argentina's embassy in the country to Jerusalem. We have more now on this report from the Global News Alliance.
The president of Argentina, Javier Milei, arrived in Israel on an official visit that has captured the attention of the world. Upon arrival, Milei expressed his intention to move the Argentine embassy to Jerusalem, a decision that has prompted a variety of reactions.
Obviously, it is my plan to move the embassy to West Jerusalem. So it is a pleasure for me to be here.
Milei met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in a visit designed to strengthen relations between the two countries.
And I think that we can do a lot more together. We share the desire for prosperity, security, and peace. Welcome, friend.
Thank you so much. It is a great pleasure for me. Thank you so much.
President Milei also visited the Western Wall, one of the most sacred sites both for Judaism and Christianism. Yehuda Chamorro, a Colombian-Israeli reporter, has closely followed Milei's visit.
Only 5 countries have moved their embassies to Jerusalem, and moving the Argentine embassy to Jerusalem is a sign of moral support for Israel by officially recognizing it as the capital. Argentina is an influential South American country, so this is an important diplomatic achievement for Israel, and perhaps other countries will also be motivated to move their embassies to Jerusalem. I believe that this new relationship is a win-win for both nations.
President Javier Milei's visit to Israel signals an important change in international politics for Argentina. Javier Bolaños, reporting for the Global News Alliance.
Have you ever heard of the term ghosting? You know, it's when someone ends a relationship by not responding to any of your calls, your texts, your emails, or messages on social media. It's like they completely fell off the face of the earth. Well, American psychologist Dr. Greg Jans wrote a book on the subject called Here Today, Ghosted Tomorrow, When Someone Disappears from Your Life. Dr. Jans says when it comes to ghosting, it appears to be more common with younger people.
Too often, our younger generation, this has been a way of maybe handling a relationship you don't want anymore. The relationship is nearly disposable, and we haven't learned how to create a way to solve problems, to actually have a conversation with someone. It's just easier to ghost them, disappear.
Make sure you catch the full interview with psychologist Dr. Greg Jans talking more about ghosting with BCN's Naveen Day coming up later in our broadcast. Well, we enjoyed more sunshine again today in Lethbridge, but fairly cool. Fortunately, a warming trend is on the way just in time for the weekend. Full weather details are coming up. We had sunshine mixed with clouds across much of southwestern Alberta again today, but fairly cool. Tonight, it'll be mainly clear with a low near -11. Tomorrow, expect more sunshine in the forecast with the mercury climbing to 0. Lots of sunshine again on tap for Sunday with a high expected near 3 degrees. For Family Day holiday Monday, a clear sky with a high near 4. Cooling off slightly on Tuesday under a mainly sunny sky with a high near 2 degrees. A few clouds will be rolling in later in the week. We should see a high of 6 degrees on Wednesday, partly cloudy and a high near 8 degrees on Thursday. Now the average high for this time of year is +2 with an average low of -10. The record high was a very balmy 14 degrees set back in 2002, and the record low, a very cold -35 set back in 1938. The sun rose at 7:40 and set at 5:52. Let's see how the rest of the country is looking for Saturday now. Sun mixed with clouds, and a high of 8 degrees for Victoria, partly cloudy with a high near 7 degrees in Vancouver. It should be mainly sunny in both Calgary and Edmonton on Saturday, with a high of 3 degrees in both cities. Expect lots of sunshine as well in Regina with a high near -2. A clear sky and -2 degrees as well for Saskatoon. Winnipeg will be partly cloudy with a high of -3 tomorrow. Now looking to the central part of the country, expect snow and a high of -3 in Toronto. Flurries with a high of -4 degrees in both Ottawa and Montreal. In Atlantic Canada, there will be sunshine mixed with clouds in Fredericton with a high near -2. Expect snow in the forecast and -3 in Halifax. Mostly cloudy and -5 for Charlottetown. And in St. John's, it'll be mainly cloudy with a high near -3 degrees on Saturday. The chief executive for WestJet has apologized for failing to accommodate people living with disabilities. Alexis von Hunsbrecht says he hopes to improve travel accessibility moving forward. He made the comments during a House of Commons Transport Committee hearing on accessible transportation yesterday. He said that the roughly 260,000 customers who required support, around 700 each day, had a good experience, however. He says most used wheelchairs or mobility aids. The appearance followed a committee session last week that saw lawmakers take Air Canada CEO Michael Rousseau to task over shocking failures around accessibility. Independent telecom provider TechSavvy is urging the CRTC to level the playing field when it comes to internet competition. The Ontario-based carrier appeared before the federal regulator today. The Commission held the final day of its hearings on whether to create a national wholesale framework that allows providers to sell fiber internet services to customers by paying a fee to access networks built by their rivals. TechSavvy says it is the most critical regulatory proceeding ever for the company. Officials say they've lost more than 100,000 subscribers since the company's peak. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 32 points on the day to finish at 21,255. The Dow was down 145 points to 38,628. The S&P 500 was down 24 on the day to 5,005. And the Nasdaq was down 47 points to finish at 15,906. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.16 to $79.19 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 3 cents to $1.61 US. Gold was up $9.19 on the day to $2,013.59 US an ounce, and silver was up 50 cents to $23.42 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.11 per bushel, barley's at $6.01, canola's at $13.26, and corn is at $7.34 per bushel. Live cattle were up $1.38 to $184.78. Feeder cattle March contract was up $3.93 to $251.03, and lean hogs April contract was up 23 cents to $85.23. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 74.16 US. Recapping one of our top stories, the province has signed a memorandum of understanding with the Blood Tribe Department of Health to continue operating the Lethbridge shelter, and will also be investing around $4 million toward expansion. Through a new MOU, government officials and the Blood Tribe will commit to continuing their partnership to advance reconciliation through Indigenous-led shelter operation. A $4 million capital grant will go toward expanding the emergency shelter through the Lethbridge Housing Authority. The shelter currently provides around 120 spaces and offers services to support our city's most vulnerable. Have you ever been ghosted? You know, it's when somebody ends a relationship with you by not answering your calls, ignoring your texts, emails, or social media messages. It's like they completely disappeared, fell off the face of the earth. Well, coming up, we're going to chat with psychologist Dr. Greg Jans about why more and more people are ghosting others. Listen, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. And if you missed any of our local stories, visit our website, bridgecitynews.ca.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. For people with special needs and disabilities, Ability Skate invites you to a dedicated sensory-friendly public skating program designed especially for you. Taking place Sundays from 1:45 to 3:15 p.m. and Tuesdays from 1 to 2 p.m. at the Civic Ice Arena, you're welcome to put on your skates and glide on the ice in a dimly lit, no-music environment. For details, visit leisure.lethbridge.ca. Discover how Lethbridge has played an important military role in the preservation of world peace and security by visiting the Lethbridge Military Museum at the Vimy Ridge Armory at the Lethbridge Airport. The museum is open to the public each Wednesday from noon to 4 p.m. Special arrangements for other days and times can be made by calling 403-328-6196. Admission is free, but donations are gratefully accepted. For more information, visit lethbridgemilitarymuseum.org. Lethbridge Sport Council's Indoor Roving Gyms program takes place Tuesdays at Emmanuel Lutheran Church from 6 to 7 p.m. and Thursdays at the Service Sports Center from 10 to 11 a.m. This program is for kids ages 5 and under and their caregivers. Come and enjoy an hour of fun and get active. Pre-registration is required and space is limited. For details and to register, visit lethbridgesportcouncil.ca/rovinggyms. And that's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar.
The internet and social media have forever changed our world of relationships. The good news is that we can much more easily keep in touch with people around the world and make some new friends. However, it can make it more difficult to discern who our real friends are. Today's guest joins us from Edmonds, Washington. Dr. Greg Jans is a psychologist, best-selling author, and founder of The Center, A Place for Hope. one of the top facilities for treatment of depression in America. His latest book is Here Today, Ghosted Tomorrow, When Someone Disappears from Your Life. Dr. Jantz, great to have you back on Bridge City News.
Good to be with you today, and I didn't ghost you. I know it's a funny word, but it's something probably everybody's experienced.
You're absolutely right. We've all experienced it, and especially if you're part of the online dating world. Now, for those of you that don't know what ghosting is, Dr. Jantz, why don't you just tell us how you define ghosting, and is this a new phenomenon?
Let me just say ghosting's a funny word to describe it, but what it means is this. You thought you had a relationship with somebody, you might have thought it was going well, and all of a sudden they disappear. They don't respond, you reach out to them, and you feel betrayal, you feel rejected, you feel a wide range of emotions, and you feel like, what's wrong with me? So that's in a dating kind of online world, but ghosting can also happen. Maybe a person had a job interview. You confirmed it, that they'd be there. And then they didn't show. They didn't say anything. They disappeared. So what we're talking about is ghosting. And yes, it's been around, but boy, with social media and the online digital world, we just have an easier way of doing it now.
Now, to what extent is it easier today to ignore people we just don't want to engage with than in times past?
Well, I can just decide I'm done with you, and I don't respond. And then it's passive aggressive. I hold the power. And you're desperately trying, what's wrong? What did I say? What did I do? And you're trying to reconnect, but you just keep not responding. And too often, our younger generation, this has been a way of maybe handling a relationship you don't want anymore. The relationship is nearly disposable, and we haven't learned how to create a way to solve problems, to actually have a conversation with someone. It's just easier to ghost them, disappear.
Okay, so how does the rejection from ghosting affect a person's self-esteem?
Yes, ghosting will affect you. First of all, as a mental health professional and as a counselor, seeing what this has done to people, you're going to feel that betrayal can really feel deep. And the effects can be, I feel like, what's wrong with me? Did I say something wrong? Do I deserve this? And so you can easily move into kind of a victim role. And also you can be very angry, you become embittered, you go, I'll never have another relationship. And you can start doing to other people what was done to you. And so be careful about recreating patterns. Somewhere along the line, we've got to intervene and say, I have to forgive this person. That was about them, not about me. I'm going to release them, because otherwise I keep carrying around all that pain, and it affects all my future relationships.
So I have a question for you, because I've been on some dating apps and I've been ghosted before, and you're right. I do start to question myself. Was it something I said? Was it something that I did? But I've also been the one that's done some ghosting, I have to admit, and usually it's because I don't think the conversation is going anywhere, or I have maybe a few conversations going, and I see potential in others. Tell me, Dr. Jantz, is there a specific gender that has a higher chance of doing the ghosting? Because as we know in online dating, women tend to receive a higher volume of messaging than men would.
Yes, and I'm going to make a general statement that a lot of times it may be men who are the one that is doing the ghosting.
Oh.
Now that's a general statement, but a lot of times we're not resolving issues, we're not having honest conversations, and so it's just a very injurious thing to do to another person.
Now, you list some of the warning signs that someone might ghost you. Can you just share some of those?
Yeah, one of the first things I want you to do is trust your gut, trust your discernment. Sometimes there may be some early warning signs in a relationship. You go, oh, and you start to see things, but you go, all right, but you ignore it, and then at some point they ghost you. But you probably had some warning signs, maybe how they treated you, how they maybe were late, how they didn't respect your time, maybe the things that they said, maybe they're talking a lot about a previous relationship. That could be a warning sign. So I'm going to say listen with your heart to any potential warning signs. A person that has a lot of anger, constant irritation, and maybe even some rage, you go, you know what? No, they could be a likely candidate in their anger to just ghost, because ghosting, it really is about power and control. So just be aware. The biggest thing is this relationship being built on trust? And is it a mutual trust? And I sense and I feel that. Or am I allowing things to slide? And so when I'm ghosted, it may not be a huge surprise.
Now, you refer to ghosting as a cowardly act. Why is that?
Because you're not dealing with the truth and you're not facing another person and you're not problem solving. You're not talking about what's really going on. You're avoiding the real issues. If I just no longer desire to be in a relationship, that's a conversation to have, not to avoid.
And what are some tips for people that want to end communication or feel that the conversation is going nowhere and just want to wind it down rather than ghosting?
You know, one of the we're gonna wind it down. One of the things is to have that conversation. It's a taking a deep breath and saying, you know, I believe I need to go another direction. I'm just discovering some things about me. Don't blame the other person, but I show gratitude for the time that you've had and so forth. But I don't see this relationship going in that direction. Say those words and listen to the other person. That's always hard to receive, but it's a lot better if we can treat another person respectfully and honorably versus ignoring or ghosting them.
Do you have any advice for those who have felt the sting of rejection from ghosting?
Yes, you felt the sting, you've had an experience, and you might want to just get hurt and angry and just withdraw and isolate and say, I'll never trust another person and I'll never be in another relationship. And that means I've got to forgive. And I need to say, you know, that was about that person, not about me. And therefore, I'm not going to carry ongoing hurt. I'm going to forgive them and whatever is going on for them, because I don't want to drag that into my next relationship. And maybe I have to say that a few times, you know, I'm going to forgive them. Maybe I need to write down in my journal the emotions that I'm experiencing. Maybe I need to prayerfully consider just what would it take for me to really forgive. But forgiveness has to enter the picture.
Well, that's a great segue to my next question, because obviously there's hope for healing after the pain of being rejected. But what are some steps to move on? You mentioned forgiveness.
Yeah. And I don't mean that's a one-time thing. You may need to really work on that. But then I need to stay engaged in relationships. I really do. Maybe I need to join a group with other people. Maybe I need to, even at times where I'm so wounded and struggling so much, if I have a lot of anxiety and depression, then I need to maybe seek some help. What is it? Because we can't carry that anxiety, that distrust. So be sure that you're addressing whatever personal issues there may be so that you can go forward.
Now, with technology and social media, ghosting is easier than ever. Do you have any specific advice for those who have digital relationships?
Make sure it's not only digital. Have a real person, real time relationship. If you're spending 80% of your time in a digital relationship, I'm just going to challenge that's probably not a real relationship. And life is different in the digital world. Life is different in the social media. You use it to communicate, but make sure that you are with that person. Um, and long distance relationships that when you've never met the person, we tend to have a image and fantasize about what everything's really like. This is why so often people are just shocked. It's not what I thought it was. So I'm for real time relationships.
That's some good advice there. Plus, there's a lot of romance scams out there as well. Now, you include a section at the end of the book titled "Recovering from a Toxic Relationship." Tell us more about that and what can a person do to recover?
Yeah, a toxic relationship is one that was probably emotionally abusive. So, emotionally abusive is maybe there was passive aggressive behavior, maybe there were a lot of put downs, maybe there was constant irritability or anger, or maybe you were in an anxious relationship where you're always worried about how they were going to respond. Are they happy with you? So, recovery from a toxic relationship means I need to be able to identify what is a healthy relationship? How do I build healthy intimacy? Sometimes we want to be in a relationship and we excuse certain things and we think being in an anxious relationship is normal. And I'm just going to challenge to say, no, let's learn about what is a healthy relationship and let's begin to work on ourselves being healthy. Make sure that I'm not bringing anger, fear, guilt, and shame into a new relationship.
Now, there are some that justify ghosting as appropriate because the person that they're communicating with or their partner is being what they consider toxic. Maybe they're a narcissist or they're displaying some sociopathic behaviors. So, are there times, perhaps maybe in a codependent relationship, where ghosting is actually appropriate?
Well, you're going to say what you're going to do. So you're going to say, um, "This isn't working out for me," and you're going to. So I want you to know, so it's not a surprise. I'm not going to be engaging or responding to any future text or communication. I just want you to know that. Say what you're going to do, and then stay with it.
And what do you mean by digital distance makes ghosting an ever-present option?
Because there is I'm not looking at you as a human being. I'm not seeing your reaction. And if it's digital, I can really be kind of powerful. I hold the power if I'm controlling if I'm going to respond to you or not. So it just makes it a lot easier. If you have to see that person real time every day, that's going to be a little harder. But if I can write you off in the digital world and there's distance, it's like, well, it doesn't matter.
Dr. Greg Jantz is the author of Here Today, Ghosted Tomorrow, When Someone Disappears from Your Life. Greg, thanks so much for being with us today.
Good to be with you today.
Well, from alcohol and drug addictions to life's hurts and pains, the reality is most of us know someone, whether it's a friend, a coworker, a relative, or anyone who struggles with this. Some do find help through the medical system, some never find help at all, and others find a spiritual solution. Joining us from Lethbridge to discuss this is Patty Bidevat, ministry leader with Celebrate Recovery. Patty, welcome to Bridge City News. Great to have you on today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this.
Absolutely. Okay, so maybe give us a bit of an overview of what Celebrate Recovery is all about.
Well, Celebrate Recovery is about finding freedom from our hurts, hangups, and habits of any kind. Most of us in life have been hurt in some way or another. And some people think that this is just for people with addictions, but it really truly isn't. We've all had hurts or hurt somebody at some point. And so we get freedom through Christ. And this is long lasting true freedom.
Okay. And you meet in Lethbridge, right? So where and when do you guys meet?
We meet on Friday evenings at 7 p.m. at the Park Meadows Baptist Church. And the last Friday of the month, though, we start at 6 o'clock because we have a pizza supper. And then it's a special Friday evening that uh, it's a celebration. So celebrate recovery. We celebrate.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the church there. Now, are people who aren't involved in any church or even non-Christians welcome to attend as well?
Everyone is welcome to attend. We welcome with open arms anybody, and we are glad to see new faces. And it is growing. It is ministering to Christians or non-Christians, and it's a great program for absolutely everyone, men and women, anybody above the age of 18.
Wow. Okay. And so you say that the program, it's not just for people who are struggling with drug and alcohol, but for a wide variety of hurts, right? Or habits or hangups. How do you help those people? Maybe explain that a little bit.
Absolutely. It is for a wide variety of hurts, hangups, or habits. Some of us, some people have issues with codependency, or maybe there might be other addictions like shopping addiction or food addiction, um, or just simply been hurt and are struggling with maybe some anxiety or depression and just need some support from a loving group of people that love God and love each other and just want to help one another in finding this true freedom. And this is, it's a part of what God has brought into my life and many people's lives around the world. And so yeah, it's for absolutely anybody.
Yeah. And a lot of those hangups sound like things that many of us can relate to as well. I mean, we all get anxiety at sometimes, the shopping addiction, I can totally
Yeah.
relate to that as well. And
Yes.
yeah, I'm sure you see it in various degrees to the point where people
Yes.
need help. So it's almost like a 12-step program, though, right? Where kind of similar to Alcoholics Anonymous. So what would the key differences be?
Well, it is very similar to the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have not been involved with Alcoholics Anonymous, so I'm not familiar at all. But from what I've heard, and that's where it originated, John Baker from California was very involved. He's passed away last year, but he started at Alcoholics Anonymous, and then he was wanting to do something that was Christ centered. And so he talked to the pastor of his church, Rick Warren, and that's where it all started. Rick Warren just said, "Okay, this is your ministry, go with it." And so it's biblical based. The 12 steps approach is from the Beatitudes, from the book of Matthew. And so it's very, set up the similar to Alcoholics Anonymous. We also have 8 principles. Uh, and so it's really set up well according to how God wants us to be able to truly find freedom, and not as the world sees it. But it's great.
It's interesting that it was started by the same person who started Alcoholics Anonymous, or AA, as it's more commonly known. And it sounds almost like he wanted to kind of make it a little bit more spiritual. Like AA is spiritual. They talk about your higher power, but it sounds more like he really wanted to hone in on that sort of Christian angle. Is that kind of what I'm getting from that?
Yes, exactly. He went to church there at Saddleback in California, and there was no Christ-based program to help people with addictions, and he had an addiction, and so he was searching, and so then he wrote up this uh, yeah, a paper to the pastor wanting to start a ministry. And yeah, Rick Warren just said, go with it. Yeah, it's blessed by God. And yeah, it's in every country around the world. It's a huge ministry, and it is really, truly helping many, many people. And me personally, it has helped me as I have been hurt in my past. And so I came just, yeah, seeking help because I was struggling with some anxiety and depression. So, yeah.
Yep. Okay. And I guess you turn around and now you're leading that group, right?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
amazing. So, what kinds of
What?
things would take place in a typical meeting? Maybe walk us through that a little bit.
Right. So at the beginning of the meeting, we have two main parts, and then at the end we can just get together for coffee and snacks at the very end after 9 o'clock. But the first hour between 7 and 8 o'clock is a large group, and people come and we sing some worship songs, and we go through and say the either the 12 principles or the 8 steps, and we listen to either one week we listen to a lesson by Johnny Baker or somebody else. Um, Sometimes it's online, but so yeah, that's how that is taught. But every other week, then we do a testimony, and we are trying actually to once a month have a live testimony. So some of our leaders have written up their testimonies, and we'll share them in person, which is very powerful.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so that's great. But otherwise, we have testimonies that we have access to online. And so the large group will meet and listen to that. Then the men and the women between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock divide into separate groups, men and women. And then they are welcome to openly share something that touched them about the testimony, or what was important that they could glean from the lesson, and just digging deeper. And also then there's a time of prayer where we can pray for one another. So it's such a blessed evening, and it's such amazing people coming together to um, just support one
Are
another. And
people required to share their own struggles at these meetings, or is it more of a like when you see fit, you can open up about it, you can sit there and just take it all in, you don't have to necessarily share?
right. At the beginning, many of us are nervous to share, and
Mhm.
so there is no requirement to share at all. Only when you are ready, you can share, and where God leads and how He leads. And yeah, at the beginning, a lot of people don't share, and that's okay. Come and listen. Come and just be a part. Build relationships. Connect with other women or men, and just yeah, over
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
as the
just
heart leads.
curious when people are addicted to a substance, or if they have a lot of that hurt that they're holding on to, how long does it take to recover from that? I know it would vary definitely from person to person, but is there kind of an average timeline that you're looking at?
Well, I'm not sure about an average timeline because a lot of people's addictions are different. We are not counselors, or we don't do counselor referrals, but some people do come after they've been either in a treatment, or sometimes they come before they've been in treatment, and then they realize that maybe they should go for treatment. So it definitely varies. I don't know if there is a an average time line, but for every person, it all depends on how serious you are and how diligent you want to dig into your
Sure. Yeah,
healing
no, that makes
and
sense.
your journey.
Are there any particular keys to breaking an addiction?
Um, there is. ultimately giving it to God. God really leads, and so that's a huge thing. Connecting with other people that attend and finding that support when you are struggling. We freely can share our cell phone numbers or communicate with people on Friday nights. After the Friday nights, um, the men have started something on a separate night called Step Studies, which digs deeper through some actual work and whatnot. And it's usually about a year long. The women are going to be starting shortly for these step studies. And so it's a separate day of the week. And you dig deeper, but you also connect more deeper on those during those step studies. So that's a separate other than Friday nights. And so that depending on how deep a person and how diligently a person is working on that will be how quickly and how soon you will find that some true freedom.
Sure. And of course, we are human beings, and obviously people have relapses. So what happens when a person relapses? What's the plan for that, and how often does that tend to happen?
For every person, it's different, and a relapse can happen sometimes even at the beginning, every other week or every week or whatever. Sometimes, whatever, like it can happen. And there is some of the lessons are geared to relapse. So there is one of the lessons called relapse. And it really helps us be aware that relapse is possible and if it does happen, what we can do. And what we can do is just keep going. Pick up your bootstraps, like don't stop your healing journey. And that's when we truly need to lean into our fellow Celebrate Recovery people, our and really just talk to them and just be open and honest. And there is no shame in coming back whatsoever. We are just glad that people will come back after relapse, and that we know they will, yeah, continue. And that's the blessing of seeing that, where somebody has relapsed and they just keep then walking the journey.
Yeah, I mean, we often hear that sometimes our social circles can shape us. So, with that said, how important is it for someone who wants to break that cycle of addiction to form some new social networks, get some new friends? Is that almost key?
It is. It is very much key because when you've been very entrenched, maybe in a deep addiction, your social circles are people that are also commonly in addiction and in that same addiction. And so, therefore, we really encourage people to connect and stay connected with friends that they meet at Celebrate Recovery, and communicate once a week or more often if needed, so that they can keep going. And yeah, they will probably see that they will connect more and more with their new friends. And that's what we encourage, and encourage, um, as they would like to maybe go to church, and meet people there. But yes, building new friendships.
Right. And then once again, just to remind our viewers, you meet at 7 p.m. on Fridays, right? In
Yes, we
Lethbridge,
meet.
anyways. Where is that?
Yes, we meet at 7 p.m. In Lethbridge at the Park Meadows Baptist Church. There is another church that is also supporting along the way and has other people involved that have come from that church, and that's Parallel, also in Lethbridge, which has been great. We've got some great support there too. So, yes, it is at 7 p.m. at Park Meadows Baptist Church every Friday.
Okay, and I would imagine if somebody does not live in Lethbridge, our viewers in Ontario or wherever, they can check with their local churches to see who
Yes.
offers a Celebrate Recovery program?
Yes, they would be able to look online and be able to find a location near them.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
It looks like we're out of time here, Patty, but thanks so much for being with us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for highlighting this awesome ministry, what God has done. Yeah, he's just continuing.
Patty Bidevat is a ministry leader with Celebrate Recovery. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.